Rahim, dear brothers and sisters. We're live on the YouTube channel of Masjid Ikhlas. We're welcoming Shaykh Kamil Ahmad. MashaAllah, it's the second talk Shaykh Kamil Ahmad has done before, biography of Imam Ahmad with us. MashaAllah, the Shaykh is a graduate from Medina University and from Qasim University. And the Shaykh, MashaAllah, he is Imam in Canada, MashaAllah, and he has a foundation as well. Uh, so Alhamdulillah, the Sheikh is a very active guy who appears on Peace TV. So Alhamdulillah, we had done before the biography when our Sheikh Muhammad Uzair Shams passed away. We had done a biography of him with Sheikh Adnan Rashid 1.5 years ago, and we wish to do a biography of his companion as well, Sheikh Allamah Bakr Abu Zayd as well, because they're very two close scholars. So Alhamdulillah, we're very honored that Sheikh Kamil Ahmad mashallah is giving us time. So without any further ado, inshallah, I will unpin myself and ask the Sheikh to start his talk.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام الأتمان الأكملان على خير خلق الله أجمعين وعلى آله وصحبه ومن اهتدى بهديه واستنى بسنته إلى يوم الدين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما وأرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه واجعلنا ممن يستمعون القول فيتبعون أحسنه. أما بعد، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. I thank Brother Ali and his organization in Cambridge, the UK, for inviting me once again, Masjid Al-Ikhlas, for sharing this knowledge and talking about one of the great scholars of our time, the late Shaykh Bakr Abu Zayd. If I could just share the screen, you can give me access. I just wanted to share some slides.
Sorry, Sheikh, you said something?
Yeah, I just wanted to share the screen.
Okay, so I'll add you a host. You should be okay, Sheikh. I have made you co-host.
Yeah, okay, inshallah. All right, so why talk about the biographies of our scholars? First of all, the scholars of Islam, the ulama, whether past or present, they are the inheritors of the prophets, as Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam informed us. They are the guiding light for the ummah. Without them, ignorance would prevail, and we would be lost in darkness. And what makes our scholars special is not mere knowledge that they have. And that is the difference between our definition of scholarship in Islam versus the definition of scholarship in Western culture and Western academia, where for them a scholar is someone who has studied all his life, researched, gone through the various academic stages, become a professor, has all these titles, etc. All of that is based on theoretical knowledge. Whereas for us, a scholar is not just someone who has knowledge, but someone who put that knowledge to use. Someone who lived their life based on that knowledge. And so they were a living example of the knowledge that they represented. And that's what we're going to see from the life of this particular alim, this particular scholar, Shaykh Bakr Abu Zayd. That's what made these scholars special and significant, and that's what distinguished them from all other people who have knowledge of the deen nowadays. Learning about our scholars and their lives, this in and of itself is a kind of ilm. This in and of itself is a kind of ilm that, we coming here and learning about a scholar of the ummah, uh, we're actually being rewarded for learning about that, right? It's not academic knowledge. It's not useless knowledge, but rather it is knowledge that will actually get us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why Imam Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah ta'ala, he says that it is more beloved to me to read about a scholar, an alim, than for me to read many issues of fiqh. We know Imam Abu Hanifa was who he was, right? In terms of fiqh. He was a scholar of fiqh, an imam in fiqh. But yet, look at what he says. That is, it is more beloved to me to sit and read and go through the life of a scholar than for me to read many issues pertaining to fiqh. And the reason for that is that when we read their lives, when we go through their biographies, it increases us in iman, and it gives us momentum. It gives us the energy and the determination to improve ourselves and to take these scholars as our role models and to try to be like them. That if they were able to do it, then why can't I? Especially for students of knowledge. For students of knowledge who aspire to become scholars, we have to take these scholars as our role models. We have to look at what made them, special, and what allowed them to, reach where they reach, so that we follow in their footsteps. And that's why the scholars from the past, would author works on the biographies of the scholars. Whether you have individual books written on certain individuals, certain scholars in our history, or encyclopedias, right? An entire encyclopedia mentioning the various notable scholars of our ummah. And there are so many, such works. The most famous of which is the one by Imam al-Dhahabi, Siyar, أعلام النبلاء. سير أعلام النبلاء. So this is why it's important to, go through the biographies and the lives of our scholars. And, this is what we are doing here today, going through the life of a very prominent alim of our era of this past century. So let us get moving on Sheikh Bakr Abu Zayd. We start with his name and his nasab, his lineage. The Sheikh, first of all, his name is Bakr ibn Abdullah Abu Zayd. Bakr ibn Abdullah Abu Zayd. And he comes from the tribe of Bani Zayd. Tribe of Bani Zayd, which is a sub-tribe of the tribe known as Al-Qada'a, which is one of the famous tribes of central Najd in Central Arabia. And the Shaykh was from around the city of Shaqra, which is which is some ways out of Riyadh, the city of Shaqra. And then his family moved to the city known as Dawadimi, which is, again, not too far from the capital, Riyadh. That is where the Shaykh was born. He was born in the city of Dawadimi. And this was in Dhul Hijjah of the Hijri year, the Hijri year of 1364. 1364. So the Shaykh was born in the end of 1364, which basically corresponds to 1945. Which basically corresponds to 1945. This is where the Shaykh received his primary education. And not too long into his childhood, while he was basically in primary school, his family moved to Riyadh, and that is where he continued his education. So he continued his education in Riyadh, and that is where he then went on to complete his secondary education in Riyadh, which at that time was the center of knowledge in Arabia. And so you had so many scholars who were there in Riyadh, as it was the capital of the Saudi state. And this is where the Shaykh basically studied the majority of his education. His prime education was there. And so he enrolled in the famous school known as Al-Ma'had Al-Ilmi, and that is where he graduated from. This was the main educational institution that produced scholars. And so many of the famous scholars of our era, they basically had graduated from that school, Al-Mahad Al-Ilmi, the likes of Sheikh Bakr Abu Zayd, Sheikh Fawzan, Sheikh Ibn Jibreen, and others. After that, the Shaykh enrolled in what was known back then as Kulliyat al-Sharia, the College of Sharia. It was an independent institution. So it was a college known as the College of Sharia. This college later on became what is today Imam Saud University, Imam Muhammad ibn Saud University, which is the Islamic University in Riyadh. But in those days, it was known as the College of Sharia. That is where the Shaykh graduated from his undergraduate studies. And then he went on to pursue his graduate studies from المعهد العلمي المعهد العالي للقضاء. المعهد العالي للقضاء, which is basically the it is the High Judicial Institute, which is basically a graduate school, and so that is where he studied. He received his master's degree from there, and later on also his PhD. That's where he received his PhD. Now, the Shaykh, he graduated, first of all, his undergraduate. He graduated with honors in 1966. That was his undergraduate. He graduated, he received his master's degree in 1979. And he received his doctorate, his PhD in 1982. Now, his research in his master's and PhD were both related to the scholar Ibn al-Qayyim, rahimahullah ta'ala. And we're going to come to that later on, the relationship that Shaykh had with, Ibn al-Qayyim. And so his master's degree was الحدود والتعزيرات عند ابن القيم. The punishments in Islam, the penal system and the penalties and whatnot, according to Ibn al-Qayyim. And his PhD was also related to Ibn al-Qayyim, أحكام الجناية على النفس وما دونها عند ابن قيم الجوزية. So basically, again, related to the chapter in fiqh, which is on punishments and the penal code, or the crimes and punishments according to Ibn al-Qayyim. All right, we move on after that to talk about who the Shaykh studied under. Now, it's impossible to mention all of his teachers and the scholars that he learned from and he benefited from, because these great scholars, they don't just study under one Shaykh or a few, scholars, but rather from their childhood until their old age, they have studied under numerous teachers and scholars. But what we'll mention here is two main scholars who he was close to and he studied at their feet. The first is Shaykh Abdul Aziz ibn Baz, the former Grand Mufti of Saudi Arabia. And so Shaykh Bakr Abu Zayd spent a lot of time with him This was when he moved to Medina. And we're going to talk about that when we come to his career life. So in Medina, both of them were there, and Sheikh Bakr Abu Zayd spent a lot of time in his company, in the company of Sheikh Ibn Baz. The other great scholar who he benefited from and studied under was Sheikh Muhammad Al-Amin Al-Shinqiti. Sheikh Muhammad Al-Amin Al-Shinqiti, the great Mauritanian scholar who migrated to Medina and settled there. Sheikh Bakr Abu Zayd used to spend a lot of time with him, and many attribute the skills that Sheikh Bakr Abu Zayd became known for, his literary skills, mastering the Arabic language, and sciences like usul al-fiqh and tafsir, etc. They attribute it to Sheikh Muhammad al-Amin al-Shinqiti, the time that he had spent with him. Because Sheikh Muhammad al-Amin al-Shinqiti was known for these topics. He was known for being a master in the Arabic language, Arabic literature, and tafsir, usul al-fiqh, and so on. So the Sheikh really was impressed by him, influenced a lot by Sheikh Muhammad al-Amin al-Shinqiti. He would attend his classes in Al-Masjid al-Nabawi, as well as personal, private classes in his home. After that, we move on to the Sheikh's career life. And so while he was still pursuing his graduate studies in Riyadh, he moved to Al-Medina. He moved to Al-Medina, where he became the chief librarian in the Islamic University of Medina, the library in the Islamic University of Medina. And in those days, that library was well known. It was perhaps the library in Saudi Arabia that had the most works and the largest collection. And Sheikh Bakr Abu Zayd was, he loved books. And we can see that, as we will see from his writings. He was an avid reader. Those who knew him would mention that he would cover, huge books in a very short period of time, reading them. And he would not just read them once, but several times. Books like Majmu' al-Fatawa by Ibn Taymiyyah. He would read it cover to cover, which is, more than 30 volumes. Read it from beginning to end. Maybe in his life, he's read it 5 or 6 times. Right? So the Shaykh moved to Medina to have this position of being the chief librarian. And this was in 1964, while he was still pursuing his master's degree. So it seems like he completed his master's degree from abroad or from a distance. And after that, in 1966, he was appointed as a judge in the judicial system. So he was a judge for a very long time, for many years. And what we see is that many of the scholars, they took on this position of being a judge. So, he was no different. Many of the scholars of that time. So you had the likes of Sheikh Salih al-Luhaydan, even Sheikh Ibn Baz was appointed as a judge in the judicial system. So the Sheikh, he was a judge. He was appointed in 1966. After that, he was appointed as a teacher in Al-Masjid al-Nabawi. So he was a teacher in Al-Masjid An-Nabawi, and um, and this was in 1979, or yes, in 19 or 1970. So in 1970, he was appointed as a teacher in Al-Masjid An-Nabawi, where he would teach hadith and fara'id, the laws of inheritance. And he did this for an entire decade. After that, he was appointed as Imam and Khatib of Al-Masjid An-Nabawi. So he was the Imam and the Khatib of Al-Masjid An-Nabawi for several years. After that, he was appointed as Deputy Minister of Justice, the Wakil of Wizarat al-Adl. And he continued in this position until the early 1990s. Until the early 1990s. And that is when he was appointed as, or before that, he was appointed as the head of the International Islamic Fiqh Academy. So Al-Mujamma' Al-Fiqh Al-Islami, مجمع الفقه الإسلامي الدولي, the International Islamic Fiqh Academy, is a body of scholars that issue fatawa, and this is under the Al-Mu'tamar Al-Islami, which is based in Saudi Arabia. So the Shaykh, he was the head of this body of scholars for almost 2 decades, for a very long time. And it was in the early 90s that the Shaykh also became a member of the Council of Senior Scholars of Saudi Arabia, Hayat Kibar al-Ulama, and he was also a member of the permanent committee, Al-Lajna al-Da'ima, which is, a select few scholars. And in those days, it was headed by Shaykh Ibn Baz, and you had with him Shaykh Bakr Abu Zayd, and Shaykh Abdullah Ibn Jibreen, and Shaykh Ghudayyan, and Shaykh Fawzan. And that's why when you go to the fatwa that were issued in those days, we're talking about in the 90s, you find that they are usually signed by these 5 scholars. However, the Shaykh did not remain in the permanent committee for a long time. He only spent a few years there, like others as well. So Shaykh Abdullah ibn Jibreen, another great scholar, did not spend that much time in that committee. And this was due to various reasons, personal reasons, as well as political reasons, where some of these scholars felt that they were being pressured to issue fatwa in favor of the government, or that they could not openly speak out. And so, because of certain friction and tensions between them and the political powers to be, either they were removed or they left on their own. So this is basically the career life of Sheikh Bakr Abu Zayd. All right, next we come to the works of the Sheikh. And this is really where, his, we see that the Sheikh, he really stands out compared to his contemporaries. Great scholars of his time did not reach the level of the Sheikh when it comes to writing and, producing works. And, the Sheikh outdid, many of the scholars of his time that he was around, that he was close with, because he, did not spend that much time in the public sphere. He was not known to come out in the public, and he didn't have any public classes and lectures, and talks like other scholars. So, like Sheikh Ibn Baz, or Sheikh Abdullah ibn Jibreel, or Sheikh Fawzan, or Sheikh Ibn Uthaymeen. These scholars were very interactive with people. They would be in the public eye. They would have, durus and lessons. They would be teaching in the masajid. They would travel a lot to the Haramain, giving lectures there, etc. Sheikh Bakr Abu Zayd did that, as we mentioned, early on. So when he was in Al-Madinah, he was appointed as a teacher in Al-Masjid al-Nabawi, and he was the Imam and Khatib there. But he did not remain in that position for a long time. And it looks like, on his own accord, he wanted to leave that public life and basically focus on writing. And that's why we don't really have anything from the Shaykh in terms of recorded lessons or lectures, like we do for other for these other scholars that I mentioned. You can barely find anything by him recorded. If it is recorded, it was from those days. We're talking about in the 1970s, and the recordings are poor from those days. And here we're talking only about audio recordings. But then, as we said, the Shaykh, he devoted his time to writing. And it's going to be impossible for us to mention all of the titles that he authored. He wrote so many different works. Some, actually, most of them were very small, short works, very small rasail, and a few lengthier works. But what I'll do is I'll mention the more famous works of the Shaykh, the books that he became known for, and some of these books are even translated into other languages, including English. So the first and most famous work of the Shaykh is Hilyat Talib Ilm, Hilyat Talib Al-Ilm. And this is a book he wrote to guide a student of knowledge on his path of seeking knowledge. How does one seek knowledge? How should one seek knowledge? And what are the qualities, characteristics that a student of knowledge must possess, etc. And due to how famous this book became, Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen, who was without a doubt more senior to Shaykh Bakr Abu Zayd, he was more senior to him. he explained, he did a commentary of this book while Sheikh Bakr Abu Zayd was still alive. And that is enough of a, appraisal for, uh, for Bakr Abu Zayd as a scholar and for this particular work, this particular book, Hilya Talib al-Ilm, for a great scholar like Sheikh Ibn Uthaymeen to, uh, teach your book, while you're still alive, and to do a commentary on it. That is a huge praise for the Sheikh and this particular work of his. And then this commentary, it was later on transcribed, and it is available in book form. Commentary of Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen of Hilya Talib, and it is translated into English and available. And I explained this book. I went through it a while back for Fitra Foundation, and for those of you who are interested in enrolling in that course soon, because it was recorded. So we recorded that course, and it will soon be made available on our website, inshallah ta'ala, which it has not been launched yet, but once it is launched, that is, the course is called An Intro to Seeking Knowledge, and many of the other courses that will be made available on our website. This course will be a prerequisite for those courses. So that is Hilya Talib al-Ilm. Among the works of Shaykh Bakr Abu Zayd, he had a book called At-Ta'alum, in which he spoke about this phenomenon of people trying to act as if they are knowledgeable and, basically acting as if they are scholars. So he puts people in their place. Also, another very important work of the Shaykh is تصنيف الناس بين الظن واليقين. تصنيف الناس بين الظن واليقين. He wrote this basically as a response to something that started to spread in his time. We're talking about the late 1980s, the early 1990s, especially among students of knowledge, where people are refuting scholars and talking ill of our scholars, and all under the name of warning against deviance, etc. So this is something that started in his time, and it continued until this very day. It is a disease that exists in our Muslim communities until this very day. And this is one of the best books that was written in response to that. The Shaykh authored this, and he wouldn't mention any names, but for those who lived in that time, they would know, who he's talking about, which individuals were leading this campaign of refuting people. And so the Shaykh wrote this book, and it has been translated into English and other languages. The next work of the Shaykh is لا جديد في أحكام الصلاة. لا جديد في أحكام الصلاة. It's a short work, but he mentions some of the very prominent mistakes and things which people started to claim were from Salah, a particular aspect of Salah, which is not really from Salah, whether it be related to the actions of Salah, certain sunan of the Salah, which people started to claim that they are from the sunnahs of Salah, or that this is how the Prophet ﷺ prayed. He clarified that, and he mentioned that this is something new that people were claiming. And that's why he titled the book لا جديد في أحكام الصلاة. There is nothing new in the rulings of Salah. This is also a very important work. I'm not sure if it has been translated into English or not. The next book is called Hirasa al-Fadila. Hirasa al-Fadila. This was a book he wrote talking about the hijab and modesty. Again, because of the phenomenon that existed in our Muslim societies, where women are starting to imitate the women of the kuffar and Western women, following in their footsteps in terms of modesty and hijab and removing the hijab and free mixing with men and so on and so forth. So he wrote this to address that. The next book that we have is called Tasmiyah al-Mawlud, Tasmiyah al-Mawlud, naming the newborn child. So he spoke about rulings related to the newborn and especially naming him. Also, he has a book called Mu'jam al-Manahi al-Lafdhiyya. Mu'jam al-Manahi al-Lafdhiyya, a dictionary of the words or the phrases that are prohibited. So there are certain words, certain phrases which we're not supposed to use in Islam that are mentioned either in the Quran or in the Sunnah, or words that became common nowadays. And so he mentions them, that these are words or phrases that we're not allowed to use. Either they are words that if we utter, then it is kufr and shirk, so we need to be careful about, or it is not, it doesn't reach that level, but it is haram for us to use these words. And then he has a book, it is a 2-volume book called Fiqh al-Nawazil, the fiqh of certain contemporary issues, in which he addresses certain contemporary issues and the fiqh rulings of them. And this is one of the early books written on this topic. And after this, many works and many books have been written with that title, or that particular subject matter of the fiqh of contemporary issues, new issues that never existed in the past, whether it is medical related or related to science and technology, etc. So he wrote whatever whatever he felt needed to be addressed. And then we have a 2-volume book called Al-Madkhal Al-Mufassal ila Madhab Al-Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. This is a very important book for those who want to study the Hanbali madhab. This is an intro to the study of the Hanbali madhab, in which he talks about the Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal and how his school developed, his school of fiqh, his students, and how the school developed, etc. And the main scholars in the Hanbali madhab and their main works and the terminologies used by the scholars of the Hanbali madhab, etc. And then we have, after that, the last book I'll mention is a very important book, Ibn al-Qayyim, Hayatuhu wa Atharuhu wa Mawariduhu. This is a biography of Imam Ibn al-Qayyim. So Shaykh Bakr Abu Zayd, he wrote this biography of Ibn al-Qayyim. As I mentioned earlier, the Shaykh was very influenced by Ibn al-Qayyim. He mentions himself that he started reading the works of Ibn al-Qayyim very early in his life. And he mentions how he basically went through almost all of his works that were available to him. And after that, we're going to see what happens after that in terms of the project that he launched. But he has this book, which is specifically on the life and times of Ibn al-Qayyim, rahimahullah ta'ala. So these are some of the more prominent and famous works of the Shaykh. Otherwise, as I said, the Shaykh has so many, close to 100 works, books that he has authored, and I cannot sit here and list all of them. These are some of the main ones that I thought I would point out. All right. Besides these individual works that the Shaykh worked on, as books that he authored on his own, we come to encyclopedias that he either participated in, he contributed to compiling, or he was the head of these projects. So there was a project which collected the works of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah. Athar Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah. The works of Ibn Taymiyyah. And the Shaykh Bakr Abu Zayd, participated in this. He led this project. They did not collect all of the works of Ibn Taymiyyah, but some of the works that had not yet been published of Ibn Taymiyyah, they published them in this project. The other project, and the more famous project that Shaykh Bakr Abu Zayd worked on, was the works of Ibn al-Qayyim. The works of Ibn al-Qayyim. So as I mentioned, the Shaykh, he had this relationship with Ibn al-Qayyim, rahimahullah ta'ala. He says himself, he says, وَقَدْ عِشْتُ مَعَ ابن قيم الجوزية رحمه الله تعالى زمنا مديدا في قراءة عامة مؤلفاته المطبوعة البالغ عددها فيما وصل إلي علمه 32 مؤلفا، منها ما يتكون من مجلدات، ومنها الرسالة في عدد من الملازم، ومنها ما بين ذلك. وقد من الله علي بقراءتها جميعها في زمن متصل، ومنها ما سبقت قراءته في أوائل الطلب. The Shaykh says, I lived with Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah a very long time, reading his published works, which have reached me based on my knowledge today, until this very day. How many? 32 books of Ibn Qayyim that he knew about. He had read all of them. He says some of them are several volumes, and some of them are just one volume. And then he says, Allah bless me to read all of them in one span, over several years perhaps. Or he says, what I read in the beginning of my journey to seeking knowledge. And I mentioned how his master's degree and his PhD was based on research that was related to Ibn al-Qayyim, rahimahullah ta'ala. So then, after that, the Shaykh started working on this project to gather all of these works of Ibn al-Qayyim and edit them properly, edit these works and then publish them in one project, like you can say, an encyclopedia of the works of Ibn al-Qayyim, rahimahullah ta'ala. So this is a project that he started, and he had hired different professors and different scholars to help him to basically edit these works. Among these scholars that he had hired one of the main sheikhs was a professor at Qura University, Ali Al-Imrani. And so he had hired him to basically help him with this project. Also, another famous sheikh who he had hired is the sheikh that Brother Ali mentioned in the beginning, Sheikh Uzair Shams, from the Indian subcontinent. And the sheikh was close to him. So these individuals who the sheikh had hired for this project, obviously the sheikh was very close to them. He had a personal relationship with each one of these individuals. And the sheikh would always ask Sheikh Uzair Shams about issues back home. How's the situation with Muslims in the Indo-Pak subcontinent? How are the scholars there? He would ask him about things related to that. So this is the works of Ibn al-Qayyim, Athar Ibn al-Qayyim, and the Shaykh ended up passing away while they were towards the end of this project. And so those who he had hired, they continued to produce the remaining works of Ibn al-Qayyim based on the guidelines left behind by Shaykh Bakr Abu Zayd. So Shaykh Bakr Abu Zayd was the head of this project, and he laid out a certain methodology that he was going to follow and he wanted to implement. So he had implemented this methodology and these guidelines on how we're going to edit the works of Ibn al-Qayyim. So after his death, these individuals and these scholars continued till they finished that project. Now, there are two other projects that Shaykh Bakr Abu Zayd had also either started or they continued after his death. The first of these is the works of Shaykh Muhammad Al-Amin Al-Shinqiti. So as you can see, Shaykh Bakr Abu Zayd was close to Shaykh Muhammad Al-Amin, and he basically wanted to publish his works to be in one place, in one encyclopedia. And so that was done. And Shaykh Muhammad Al-Amin Al-Shinqiti had books, but not that many. His most famous work was his tafsir, Al-Dwa Al-Bayan. And so that is part of this project. So, but besides that, he had other works as well. So they were put in one collection. And the other project was the works of Shaykh Abdul Rahman Al-Muallim. He was a Yemeni scholar from this past century who had migrated to Mecca. He lived in Mecca. In fact, Abdul Rahman Al-Muallimi, before that, he spent time in India as well. Shaykh Abdul Rahman Al-Muallimi, he had traveled to India and he spent several years over there. And then when he returned, he moved to Mecca. And he was a scholar of Hadith, and he authored various books. So Shaykh Bakr Abu Zayd also, he had started this project, and the work continued after his death. So these are some of the encyclopedias that the Shaykh contributed to. All right. One last thing that I wanted to go through regarding Shaykh Bakr Abu Zayd was his personality. And like I mentioned in the very beginning of this session, this is basically the fruit. And this is basically why we read and go through the biographies of our ulama and our scholars, whether past or present. Because of these traits that they have, because of these qualities, these characteristics, that they had either they were God-given, Allah blessed them with these traits, or they developed them until they were known for these traits. And when we read the biographies of the Salaf, we wonder, it's impossible for me in this day and age to become like that. We read the biographies of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, the Tabi'een, and those who followed them, and we think to ourselves, they were on a different level. It's impossible for me to become like that. And when we look at their ibadah and whatnot, we wonder, where am I compared to that? It's impossible for me to become like that. Some, they may give up because of that, right? And this is why it's important for us to look at the biographies of the scholars who lived in our day, who are living in our time. So we have no excuse now. We can't say, oh, I'm not able to do it, because they were living in a different era, in a different time. They didn't have the problems that we have today. No, we have these scholars who live in our time. And, the likes of Shaykh Bakr Abu Zayd, he is someone who resembles the Salaf in, his personal life, in his diligence, in seeking knowledge, authoring works and whatnot. Right? So now who has an excuse to say, oh, it's impossible to be like that, to be like the Salaf, the scholars of the past, when you have living examples in our time who did it. In the end of the day, it's all about, number one, the tawfiq of Allah, and number two, having a will, a strong willpower, and to say to myself, you know what, they did it, I can also do it, and I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna, be determined to reach their level. So, anyways, certain personal traits of the Shaykh he was known for. Certain traits are shared by him and other scholars, right? Having a lot of knowledge, authoring books, teaching, and so on and so forth. This is something that is shared among, the scholars of our time. But then there are certain other traits that made Shaykh Bakr Abu Zayd unique and different than everyone else in his time. So what are these traits? Number one, his perseverance in seeking knowledge and his diligence in seeking knowledge, where there was no one like him. And what he ended up becoming later on, the scholar that he ended up becoming later on, was as a result of a strong foundation from a young age. And this is something, someone like Shaykh Bakr Abu Zayd should be a role model for every student of knowledge. Every student of knowledge who aspires to become a scholar, he needs to look at the life of Shaykh Bakr Abu Zayd and other scholars like him. Also, from his personal traits that he was known for is his strong literary skills. What I mean by that is that Shaykh Bakr Abu Zayd was on a different level compared to the scholars of his time. There were scholars of his time who were more senior than him, more knowledgeable than him in general. They were, scholars who were known. And some of them were his own teachers, right? Like Shaykh Ibn Baz, Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen, more knowledgeable than Bakr Abu Zayd in the general sense. However, Shaykh Bakr Abu Zayd outdid these scholars in his literary skills. His literary skills. And you see that in his writings. You see that in his writing. And this was something that was attested to by these scholars. And I mentioned Hilya Talib al-Ilm, right? That book, Hilya Talib al-Ilm, that was explained by Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen. Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen did a commentary and explained this book because of how advanced it was. It was such a difficult piece of work to understand. The Arabic language was very advanced. That's why beginner students of knowledge, when you first start seeking knowledge and you're learning Arabic, you ask, who can I listen to who his Arabic language is easy and, I can listen to him and understand most of what he's saying. Shaykh Bakr Abu Zayd does not come in that category. He does not come in that category. And even though this book, Hilya Talib al-Ilm, is such a crucial work for a beginner student of knowledge, but you can't understand what he's saying. And that's why Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen sat to teach this book, to explain it. It's whatever was difficult in the language in this book, he explained it. Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen says about Bakr Abu Zayd and about this book. He says, إن كلامه في غالب كتبه كلام يدل على تضلعه في اللغة العربية، والذي يظهر أنه لا يتكلف ذلك لأن الكلام سلس ومستقيم، وهذا يدل على أن الله تعالى أعطاه غريزة في اللغة العربية لم ينلها كثير من العلماء في وقتنا، حتى إنك لتكاد تقول هذه الفصول كمقامات الحريري وهي معروفة. Sheikh Ibn Uthaymeen says about Bakr Abu Zayd, he says most of his books that he has written prove how well versed he is in the Arabic language. And it shows that he doesn't go out of his way to write in that in that way, in that advanced style. And then he says that all of this proves that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given him the skill, literary skill of the Arabic language, that many of our scholars in our time have not been gifted by Allah. He says, to the point where you will think that this is a book from the past. Like Maqamat al-Hariri. Maqamat al-Hariri is a masterpiece on Arabic literature. It is something you have to go through as a student of the Arabic language. It's a very advanced book in Arabic literature. And Shaykh Ibn Baz, his personal secretary, Muhammad al-Musa, he says about Shaykh Ibn Baz, وكان يعجب كثيرا من أساليب صاحب المعالي العلامة الشيخ بكر أبو زيد، وكان يقول متعجبا من أين يأتي الشيخ بكر بهذه الأساليب والتراكيب. He says that Shaykh Ibn Baz used to be very impressed by the style of writing of Shaykh Bakr Abu Zayd, and he would ask, where does Shaykh Bakr come with this style and the structure of writing? So this is what Shaykh Bakr Abu Zayd was known for, and it's very evident in his works. And perhaps that's why many of his works have not been translated. I mentioned a few that have been translated, but a lot of his other works have not been translated. And perhaps this is the reason for that. An obstacle that comes in the way of many translators is the difficulty of translating a very complex and difficult work. In fact, even the works that have been translated, to be honest, there's a lot of improvement required in fixing up those translations. Also, among the personal traits of the Shaykh is interacting with contemporary events. We see this in his writings. The Shaykh, whatever would happen, whatever would occur in his time, he would sit down and write about it from the Islamic perspective. Anything that needed to be addressed, he would address it in the form of writing, doing inkar al-munkar, of evils in society, denouncing them, forbidding the evil. He would do it in the form of writing. And so, the pen is the weapon of the scholar that he uses in his jihad against the enemies of Allah and those who are spreading evil society. And so you see this in his writings. Almost everything that he wrote pertains to contemporary issues. I mentioned a few when we covered the titles that we covered. And besides that, there were many. So I mentioned, for example, Hirasat al-Fadila, about women and modesty. This was at a time when immodesty was spreading in Saudi society. So he addressed this topic. Likewise, I mentioned the book Tasnif al-Nas Bayn al-Dhann wal-Yaqeen. Those who were starting to refute scholars, he started to write about. He wrote about that issue. And he also has a book that I didn't mention, خصائص جزيرة العرب. خصائص جزيرة العرب. Certain characteristics that the Arabian Peninsula is unique for, certain characteristics. And this was when, certain things were being introduced into Saudi Arabia that are not allowed to be introduced in Jazirat al-Arab, the Arabian Peninsula. And then he had another book called Al-Ibtal li Nadariyat al-Khalq Bayna Din al-Islam wa Ghayrihi min al-Adyan, refuting the idea of mixing the deen of Islam with other religions. This idea of interfaith, where we, say, let's come together and forget about our differences between religions. Why did he write about that? Because of how this was, becoming prevalent. So this shows us how Shaykh would interact with contemporary events. He wasn't someone who would live in the past and only write about topics that are mentioned in the books of fiqh, etc. But he would go beyond that and talk about what needed to be talked about, addressing things that needed to be addressed. And this is the role of the scholar. This is what the true scholar is supposed to be doing, right? He's supposed to be addressing issues that need to be addressed. Also, from the personal traits of the Shaykh that he was known for was his humility, his humbleness, his humility. I mentioned earlier that the Shaykh, he stopped teaching in the public, and he stopped interacting publicly with people, and he just stayed to himself. And that's why, this is something that I can personally relate to, that when I went, to study, we would hear about great scholars of our time who were alive. And we would make it a point to go and visit these scholars and to benefit from them, to sit with them, even if they were not in our city. So I was, initially when I was in Medina, we would travel to Mecca or to Riyadh, and we would go around visiting the great scholars who were still alive. We tried our best to somehow visit Sheikh Bakr Abu Zayd, and we failed. We weren't able to. We visited many scholars. And when we went to Riyadh, where the Sheikh was living towards the end of his life, and we visited many of the scholars, the likes of, Sheikh Ibn Jibreen, Sheikh Ghudayyan, Sheikh Fawzan, and others. And Sheikh Bakr Abu Zayd, we knew him through his works, but it was impossible to visit him. So he was not open to people in that sense. This was from his humility. Also, what shows how humble and down to earth he was was the fact that he didn't like titles. So titles that people aspire for, like being a professor, a doctor, having this title of doctor. You won't find Dr. Bakr Abu Zayd on any of his books. You won't find the author being Dr. Bakr Abu Zayd. But many other professors and many other people who wanted to be out there, they would always add that. They would add the DR, or in Arabic, the dal to their title. In fact, the Shaykh wrote a book on this, specifically on this issue, called تغريب الألقاب العلمية. تغريب الألقاب العلمية, to westernize these academic titles. Why are we Muslims imitating the kuffar and having, these different titles? Doctor, professor, etc. Right? So he wrote an entire book on this. Also, he stuck to the old title. So basically, the title for masters is Al-Alamiyya, and then PhD is Al-Aliyya, etc. He stuck to those titles. So this shows how down-to-earth the Shaykh was. Many of those who interacted with him personally also, they have memories of how he would be so humble and down-to-earth. He would be the one, if he was to go and visit someone, he would be the one serving, the tea and the coffee, and he's not even the host. And he would be serving them, and so on and so forth. So these are from the personal traits of the Shaykh that he became known for. Finally, we'll just mention that the Shaykh, he passed away. He passed away in 1429 of the Hijrah, corresponding to 2008. He passed away after an illness, after spending time coping with an illness. And his death was on February 5th, in the year 2008. And so we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to shower his mercy upon the Shaykh, to forgive him, to accept from him all of his efforts in serving the deen of Allah, and to basically allow us to benefit from him through the legacy that he has left behind. And this is what I will conclude with. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. جزاكم الله خيرا.
Jazakumullah, Sheikh. Just a few comments on the Sheikh's, mashallah, beautiful talk, very emotional, mashallah. So, regarding the Sheikh's English book, so we have Hilya is translated in English by Hidayah Bookstore, so it's available. He has a book on the etiquettes of telephone, which is phones, which is in English, and the book the Sheikh mentioned, Guarding Virtue, it is as well translated in English, and Hidayah Bookstore have it in stock. I mean, Guarding Virtue, Hirasatul Fadila. So the Sheikh, some of his French book, the book Tasnifun Nas Bain Adhan wal Yaqin is translated by Al-Bayna, Cataloguer les gens en. And as well, his another book is available in French, Dar al-Fitna an Ahl Sunnah, which is introduced by Sheikh Fawzan or by Sheikh Abdulaziz al-Sheikh or Sheikh Ibn Baz, I'm not sure, but it is when many of Salafi scholars, they made mistakes regarding the creed of Irja. So that kufr can only happen with the belief. So this was an issue. The Sheikh was very concerned as well. And this book, it's referring to the Ahl Sunnah and middle path between the Khawarij and Murjia. The French title is Ahl Sunnah, le juste milieu entre les Khawarij and Al-Murjia. And Sheikh Fawzan, Sheikh Udayan, Sheikh Bakr Abu Zayd had many writings regarding that kufr can occur with actions. Dr. Alawi Saqaf as well, he wrote a book on this issue introduced by Sheikh Ibn Baz. So this for the French, the book in Urdu, Sheikh Arif Jubaid Mohammadi from Jamia here to Kuwait, they translated into Urdu the book on Wahdatul Adyan. So that's for those who speak Urdu as well. They can obtain all these, and the book Ta'allum as well has been translated in Urdu in India by some of our scholars. So the brothers who know French, English, and Urdu, they can purchase this book. Just to finish, that on our Masjid's YouTube channel, Sheikh Abdurrahim Makati has done a study in 1 hour and a half. He summarized the book Hajar al-Mubtadi', which is as well an important book of the Sheikh, because when he saw that some people were lenient and some were over-exaggerating on this issue, they did not consider the time and the place when the Ahl Sunnah are stronger and weaker. And he mentioned the fatwa of Shaykh Islam ibn Taymiyyah, and that it depends on the strength of Ahl Sunnah. Imam Ahmad gave a different fatwa for the people of Khurasan, where the Jahmiyyah were strong. So this is based on maslahat. So he mentioned all the fatwa of contemporary scholars and Ibn Taymiyyah. So you can, on our YouTube channel, this book, Hajar al-Mubtadi', has been explained by Sheikh Abdurrahim Makati. You can search it on YouTube. So for the brothers who want to. So very thankful for the Sheikh. The Sheikh, mashallah, you can follow him online. Mashallah, he before taught in his foundation, Aqidah Tadmuri, and now he's starting Aqidah Wasitiyah with some brothers in England. So you can join this course as well, which is very beneficial. The Sheikh as well, he's teaching all the books of Hafiz ibn al-Qayyim as well. So I think Dawa, this is the book they're going on online. So you can join his courses, who are very beneficial. So this is what the Sheikh is as well, mashallah, very fond of the books of Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah and Hafiz ibn al-Qayyim. So we very thankful for the Sheikh to have given us this very beneficial time. If any brothers or sisters have 1 or 2 questions maximum, because the Sheikh, mashallah, has given us lots of time. So 1 or 2 questions we can take if brothers have. Alhamdulillah, we've got brothers on YouTube as well, but I can't take their questions. Let me check if on YouTube they have. No, there's no question. So if there's no question, we'll end up the Sheikh, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. May Allah preserve you. We wish, inshallah, once you can visit us in England, inshallah, as well. And so we can benefit you. May Allah Ta'ala preserve you.
Inshallah. Jazakallah khair. Allah yabarak.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. Assalamu alaikum.